Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Beth, and I just finished reading Brief Interviews with Hideous Men by David Foster Wallace. This book was published in 1999 and is about 320 pages long. There actually also is a motion picture, which I have not seen. That came out in 2009 and is directed by John Krasinski. So, this is obviously a David Foster Wallace book, so it's not the easiest of reads, but I do think this is definitely on the easier end for this author. I think that you have to be a bit careful when reading this book, just in the way that you are interpreting this. I had a discussion with a friend of mine, and we talked about how certain passages could be almost dangerous due to interpretation, because I feel that a lot of these, yes, it's called Brief Interviews with Hideous Men, but a lot of the characters are legitimately humanized to a point where I felt you could see the line of logic with a lot of these people and you could empathize with them. And to a degree, that's a really amazing piece of insight into your own psyche, but you also have to understand that that's what makes them so awful, because you don't view a lot of these men as, mustache twirling villains. You see them as actual people, and you can see what brought them to their current line of reasoning, and how a lot of it is based off of actual fact and truth, but everything's just been slightly skewed to the point where it's not a good outlook for the rest of the world. So this is just I believe this is considered a bunch of short stories, though it reads like almost in a conversation between the reader and David Foster Wallace. There's even a section, it's called Octet, which is such a misnomer because they're not actually 8 parts, and a huge portion of it is just David Foster Wallace rambling about his own insecurities to us, the reader, which in a sense almost makes him part of the villainous party, because he says, oh, I don't want to be viewed as this, I don't want to be viewed as that, putting a lot of expectations on the reader. And I think I actually finally picked up and read this book after it being in my TBR for years, because I had just seen the film End of the Tour, which was an A24 film, came out in the mid-2010s. And it got a lot of acclaim, but I'd never seen it before. And I felt that I really just wanted to have a conversation with David Foster Wallace, who was such an interesting character. And you really do get to see that in this book, especially since, he does speak to us directly at certain points. And I think that a lot of the themes are, if you really like that movie, I think that you will also really enjoy this book. Because, like I said, it's just a little piece of him that kind of comes back to the reader. And I feel that I don't really typically like short stories. I don't know if you've probably seen me read one or two other of those on this channel. It's not my favorite thing to read. I've never been a big fan, but this is more of like a tapestry of ideas. Like I said, it's this conversation, it's this interrogation, and a lot of it is just you trying to understand yourself while you're trying to understand David Foster Wallace. And I think that's what makes it such an intriguing read. There are certain sections, like there's even a segment that is actually in the octet when Dave Foster Wallace is talking to the reader. He says she, as if he's making, obviously I am a female, but he's making that expectation that it is a female reader who is reading his work. He never says he never says they, them, nothing. He says that a female is reading this book, which I think is quite interesting, because maybe he himself thought that this title would be off-putting to the male public, or maybe he wants to challenge males who read this work to maybe look into themselves and see what they find. But that, and it's just a tiny little detail that once you spot it, you can't unsee it, but it's brilliant to me. There's also a really, really long, arduous section. I say long and arduous, but it was maybe only like 20 pages, like 20, 30 pages, about this woman with depression who starts spiraling after her therapist commits suicide. And a lot of it is just so self-centered, and you see how much she's imposing on other people by pretending not to impose on other people, by saying, oh no, I'm so sorry, you don't have to, I don't want you to do this, but, just all these different things that, someone like me, I think a lot of people do this, where they don't want to impose on somebody, but in fact, by not imposing on somebody, they are imposing on somebody and making it that much worse and that much more annoying. And I love especially if you've ever read David Foster Wallace works before, he loves the use of like annotations, and there's no glossary in the back, but I do like that, you know, you get all these little insights when you have to read the notes on the bottom of the page, that in his books, it's not just like, oh, this is what this means and why. It's like, no, this is the story within the story. It's almost the inside joke or the insider knowledge that you can go through, which he's the only other author I've really seen do that. He's doing that himself, and he's adding context to the story through these footnotes. And, you know, you especially see this with Infinite Jest. I mean, that is his, in my opinion, as of thus far, from what I've read, that is his best book. That is, you know, this beautiful, sprawling tale of what it means, you know, how, you know, the world around us is shaped and how we can find happiness in this new age. I love Infinite Jest. Don't get me wrong. It is definitely an arduous read, but if you've never read it before, just find that mental space and read Infinite Jest, because it is truly an experience. And I would say this is also an experience. I think this is an easier experience for sure. You can pick it up, set it down, pick it up, set it down. Though I did enjoy it more when I was reading it in a steady pace, when I had time to just sit and read. I think I enjoyed it a little bit more, because I think that it wants to be read all at once. But it's shorter. Infinite Jest is over 1,000 pages. So maybe as an intro, read this, or maybe if you just want a little David Foster Wallace, which is what I wanted, I'd say go for it. I think that, in the same vein, I don't think you should read this book if you're very sensitive to misogyny. I think that there is a lot of that, but the point is to kind of expose those themes and expose, you know, the horrid attitudes that one might have. And it's not just misogyny. There is also a story about a man who loathes his son, and he loathes what his son did to the love of his life, his wife, because she was constantly caring for him, and how his son became her whole life, and how she wasted years, and he kind of just sat back. And out of reverence to his wife, he didn't tell her how much he hated their son, and he even talks about how he wanted to kill his son. And this is near the end of the novel. I don't think the ending of the book is very good. Personally, I felt that it could have ended on a stronger note. But I think there are a lot of really nice gems in the middle that are nice to pick up. Anyway, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good one.